Have you ever wondered if the very first signs of Alzheimer's might not be related to memory at all? We usually associate it with forgotten keys or names. But what if I told you that a loved one could vividly remember events from 30 years ago, yet the disease has already begun its silent work? Today, we're going to discuss the 5 earliest and most subtle signs of Alzheimer's. These are the everyday details we often dismiss as tiredness, a change in personality, or simply the natural process of aging. But knowing these signs can help us gain the most precious thing we have: time. First, let's clarify something. Alzheimer's disease is far more than just typical age-related forgetfulness. It's a progressive brain disease that gradually erodes memory and cognitive function. Imagine your brain is a vast library with millions of books. The disease doesn't simply tear out individual pages. Instead, it first disorganizes the catalogue, then collapses the shelves, and eventually extinguishes the lights in the reading areas. And this process often starts in the most unassuming corners of this vast library. So let's start with the first and perhaps most insidious sign, one that often masks itself as a regular personality quirk. This is a change in a person's sense of humour and social skills. Imagine a loved one, perhaps your father or grandfather, who was always the life of the party. He told great jokes, always knew what to say, and was tactful and charming. Suddenly, you notice his jokes have changed. They've become flat, sometimes even inappropriate or downright cruel. He might say something hurtful to a guest at the dinner table and genuinely not understand why everyone suddenly went silent. It's not because he's suddenly become a mean person. What's happening is that the disease has begun to affect the frontal lobes of the brain. These are our social navigators, responsible for empathy, tact, and understanding context. The person stops reading nonverbal cues, misses sarcasm, and doesn't grasp why their words might be hurtful. Or the opposite situation can occur. Someone who once loved guests and lively parties suddenly becomes withdrawn and apathetic. They avoid meetings, decline invitations, preferring to sit alone in front of the television. We might think, he's just tired, age is catching up to him, or he's stressed. But in reality, it could be the brain losing its ability to process complex social information, and isolation becomes a protective mechanism for them. Here's the second red flag, often brushed off as mere absent-mindedness or eccentricity: issues with money. And I'm not talking about someone simply forgetting to pay a bill. That happens to all of us. No, this goes deeper. It's about losing the fundamental grasp of what money actually means. Suddenly, your usually frugal and sensible relative starts making completely illogical purchases. They might blow half their pension on a useless item from a TV shopping channel, or buy 10 identical shirts just because they like the colour. They might fall prey to scammers, handing over their life savings because their critical thinking and ability to assess risk have significantly weakened. Another marker is difficulty with even simple financial transactions. Someone who managed the family budget their entire life might suddenly struggle to count their change correctly at the store. They might stand at the register for ages, fumbling with bills, looking utterly bewildered. Or they can't even fill out a simple utility bill. For them, numbers and their meanings start to unravel, becoming mere abstract symbols. This isn't carelessness. It's the brain losing one of its most fundamental survival skills in the modern world. The third and perhaps most subtle sign is often mistaken for simple clumsiness. This involves difficulties with visuo-spatial perception. While that sounds technical, its manifestations in daily life are strikingly obvious. And to be absolutely clear, this isn't about bad eyesight or needing glasses. Instead, it's about how the brain processes the visual information it receives from the eyes. A prime example is driving. Someone with decades of accident-free driving experience might suddenly find themselves struggling to park. They'll constantly hit curbs, misjudge the car's dimensions, or struggle to accurately gauge the distance to other vehicles. But it also shows up in smaller, everyday moments. They might pour a drink and spill it, missing the glass. They try to hang a picture but struggle to align the nail with the hook. They might trip on flat ground or find it difficult to descend stairs because their brain has stopped accurately interpreting depth and distance. This isn't just clumsiness, it's a glitch in our brain's internal GPS system. This next point is closely related to the previous one, but it focuses specifically on the sequence of actions. We often dismiss this as simple absent-mindedness. What I'm referring to are difficulties in performing familiar tasks, especially those that involve multiple steps. A classic example? Cooking. Your mother has baked her signature apple pie her entire life. She knew the recipe by heart. Then one day, you might find her standing in the middle of the kitchen, looking utterly bewildered. She's added the flour and eggs to the dough, but the next step completely escapes her. She might forget to add the sugar, or even to put the pie in the oven. This kind of breakdown manifests in all sorts of everyday situations. Someone might start getting dressed, put on a shirt, and then just freeze, completely forgetting to button it up. Or they might try to use a washing machine they've known for years, only to get the settings mixed up and not understand why it won't start. This isn't laziness, nor is it fatigue. Instead, it's the brain losing its ability to construct and retain a logical sequence of actions. First A, then B, then C. What's a straightforward algorithm for us becomes an incredibly complex puzzle for them. Now let's turn our attention to something that's perhaps the most painful to witness: the loss of initiative and a pervasive, overwhelming apathy. This is arguably the most challenging symptom to diagnose because it's incredibly easy to confuse with depression, burnout, or even just plain laziness. Imagine your loved one, a lifelong avid gardener. Every spring they eagerly anticipated going to their plot, getting their hands dirty in the garden beds. It was their passion, their solace, their escape. Then suddenly this year, they flat out refuse to go. To all your pleas and coaxing, they offer the same responses. I don't want to. It's not interesting. I'm tired. And this isn't just a bad mood. It's as if their inner spark, the very engine that fueled their desires and aspirations, has simply vanished. All motivation to do anything at all disappears. They stop caring about the news, their children's lives, and refuse to meet with friends. This isn't the sadness of feeling low. It's an emptiness, a state where they feel nothing at all. And this void, this profound indifference to everything that once brought joy, is one of the most ominous and earliest warning signs of Alzheimer's disease. Our next point concerns subtle but highly indicative changes in speech patterns. We're not talking about the classic scenario where someone momentarily forgets an actor's name or a complex word. That's something everyone experiences. The issue runs deeper. It's about individuals beginning to lose access to their own vocabulary. They want to say something, but can't quite find the precise word, and instead, they start using descriptive phrases. For instance, instead of saying, "Please pass me the watch," they might say, "Hand me, that thing, that shows time on your wrist." Or, in place of screwdriver, they'll say, "That little stick for turning screws." Their speech becomes simpler, less rich, and they more frequently use filler words like or whatchamacallit. Another significant marker is finding it difficult to maintain a conversation in a group setting. They quickly lose the thread of the discussion, drop out of the dialogue, ask to repeat what was just said, or simply disengage silently. This indicates a brain that can no longer cope with the multitasking required to process rapid speech. Let's talk about some everyday oddities that at first glance might just seem amusing or utterly absurd. Individuals begin placing objects in entirely inappropriate locations. While all of us, when utterly exhausted, might absent-mindedly put the TV remote in the fridge, what we're discussing here is a systematic and illogical pattern of behaviour. You might find reading glasses in the sugar bowl, a wallet tucked into a shoebox, or even a dirty plate stashed among freshly laundered linens. The critical point isn't simply that they've forgotten where they put something. The key lies elsewhere. At the very moment these actions were performed, to their impaired mind, they seemed entirely logical and correct. They perceived nothing unusual about it. When you later discover these items and inquire why they ended up in such odd places, The person either genuinely cannot recall performing the action, or they might offer a completely nonsensical explanation. This isn't mere forgetfulness. It signifies a breakdown of logical connections in the brain, where familiar associations, like glasses on the table or keys by the door, begin to unravel. Next up, we have problems with disorientation, and I'm not talking about getting lost in an unfamiliar forest. I'm talking about losing your way in places you know intimately. This is one of the most frightening signs, and it's something people often keep secret due to shame and fear. Your loved one might head to a store they've frequented for the past 20 years, only to stop halfway, suddenly unsure of where to go next. A familiar street might suddenly feel completely alien. They could reach their own house, but then struggle to find the door to their apartment. Sometimes this even manifests within the confines of their own home. A person might get up at night to use the restroom, and on the way back, get lost in the hallway, unable to find their bedroom. These moments of disorientation can last from a few seconds to several minutes, and they trigger intense panic. The person realizes that something is terribly wrong, but feels utterly powerless to control it. Another red flag, often dismissed by family as age-related quirks or simple sloppiness, is a noticeable decline in self-criticism regarding their own well-being and appearance. Their accurate self-perception simply vanishes. A person who has been meticulously neat their entire life might suddenly stop taking care of themselves. They could wear the same clothes for days, simply forgetting to change them. They might neglect regular showering or brushing their teeth, leading to an unkempt appearance. Crucially, they themselves perceive no problem whatsoever with these changes. If you gently try to bring it to their attention, they might react with genuine surprise or even offence, asking, "What's wrong? I'm perfectly fine." They lose the capacity to objectively evaluate themselves. This issue isn't limited to just hygiene. They might step out in freezing temperatures wearing summer shoes or put on a shirt inside out, and to them, it would seem entirely normal. This symptom strongly points to significant impairments in the brain regions responsible for self-awareness and social conduct. And finally, but by no means least, a symptom that can be incredibly draining for loved ones: repetitive actions, phrases, or questions. The person might ask the same question every 5 minutes. For example, "When is Katya arriving?" You answer them. 5 minutes pass, and they ask again, "I've forgotten something. Is Katya coming today?" They don't do this to deliberately annoy or irritate you. They genuinely and sincerely don't remember having asked before, or that you've already given them the answer. This is a classic example of a short-term memory glitch. Imagine that the information you provide simply isn't saving to the hard drive of their brain. It enters, but it's instantly deleted. This can also manifest in repetitive actions. They might repeatedly rearrange the same object, or constantly check if a door they've just locked is actually secure. This isn't just simple forgetfulness, it's a systemic memory failure. And now, for the most crucial part, the moment that truly changes everything. Do you know the biggest, most cruel deception of Alzheimer's disease? All those signs we've discussed, the apathy, the strange jokes, issues with driving or parking, financial mistakes, they can appear 5, 10, sometimes even 15 years before a person truly starts losing their memory and receives an official diagnosis. 15 years, just imagine. For all that time, family members might dismiss these oddities as a bad temper, stress, or just the usual quirks of aging. They might even argue with or get offended by the person, completely unaware that their loved one is already sick and that it's not their fault. And that's where the real tragedy lies. Precious time is lost. Time when you could have prepared. Time to start supportive therapies that could slow the progression of symptoms. Time to sort out legal and financial matters. And most importantly, time to simply understand what's happening, offering more comfort and support to your loved one instead of criticism. Early diagnosis doesn't cure the disease, but it fundamentally changes the quality of life, both for the patient and their entire family. So let's summarize. The less obvious signs of Alzheimer's aren't primarily about memory. They're about changes in personality, daily habits, and the ability to navigate the world. It's a fading sense of humour, financial carelessness, apathy, problems with speech, and spatial disorientation. Pay close attention to your loved ones. Don't dismiss these strange behaviours. Thank you for watching this important video all the way through. If you found this information helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new episodes. Now, a question for you. Have you noticed any of these less obvious signs in your loved ones? Or perhaps you know of other early symptoms that we didn't mention? Please share your story in the comments below. Your experience could truly help someone else.